This morning, the Texas National Guard are on duty in the Chicago area, marking their first mission since arriving in Illinois earlier this week over the objections of city and state leaders there.
I can't believe I have to say troop movements in a city in the United States, but that is what we're talking about.
With demonstrations protesting the federal deployment, local officials say the presence of those forces is only inflaming tensions. But President Trump argues National Guard troops in Chicago and Portland, Oregon are critical to protect federal agents and property.
Everything we're doing is very lawful. What they're doing is not lawful.
Some tense encounters caught on camera.
What are your guys' names?
This right here.
Like Border Patrol agents near Chicago confronting a protest organizer recording their operations.
Well, I suggest you stop following us, all right? Otherwise, we're going to arrest you for impeding your order.
I'm not impeding anything.
We're letting you know this is the first warning and last warning.
This morning, NBC News also learning White House officials are having increasingly serious discussions about President Trump invoking the Insurrection Act, which would allow deployment of active duty troops, according to 5 people with knowledge of the talks. The president also ratcheting up his threats against Illinois' Democratic Governor J.B. Pritzker.
That guy's a loser.
Posting Pritzker and the Chicago mayor should be in jail for failing to protect ICE officers. President Trump apparently referring to this recent attack when an SUV rammed a vehicle full of ICE agents.
When you have a group of people where the police call off the safety for ICE officials, I've understood that, and I've read it today in numerous journals, that that's illegal.
Chicago police deny their officers were told to stand down, and Pritzker is defiantly responding to the president's threat of arrest.
Look, he's a coward. He says a lot of things to the camera. He likes to pretend to be a tough guy. Come and get me.
So pending the legal challenges, National Guard troops could move into Portland, Oregon within days. And in Memphis, Tennessee, the police chief there says troops could be deployed in his city by the end of this week, potentially marking 5 deployments of National Guard troops in major American cities, all of them led by Democrats in just the last 4 months.
Hello. Bobby Jones here for Meidas Touch and Valor Media Networks. Since President Trump's second term has began, we have seen this escalation of using the military for local law enforcement purposes. Now, of course, this has gotten a lot of press. The constitutionality has been questioned. But there is one trend that I think is being underreported by mainstream media. And it's not just the fact that the National Guard is being sent to these locations. It's really who's volunteering the forces to be used. Yes, President Trump has overwhelmingly used these forces to go into blue cities in mostly blue states. However, the Guard members that are being called up are being called from red states to go into blue states, creating culture clashes, veiled underneath the umbrella of federal authority. Now, these National Guard units from red states are being put there or being volunteered there by red state governors. And this is a trend that we have never in American history seen before. And I want to dive into that to talk about the historical deployments of National Guards, but most importantly, how governors have played a role and how things are different now. So let's start by talking about the constitutionality of calling up the National Guard and how that works. Normally, Guard troops are called up by their respective state governors. Let me be very clear. The governor of California would typically call up the California National Guard in support of emergency operations in the state of California. For Guard members or Guard units to go to other states, it would require the requesting governor of that other state to make a formal request to the governor that is supplying the forces in order to help, and they agree upon that occurring. So both governors, the one receiving the help and the one requesting the help, has to agree on those troop movements. Part of this is because of the Posse Comitatus Act, which forbids federal troops, or i.e. American military troops, being deployed in American spaces to do local law enforcement work without basically a declared state of emergency by Congress, etc. The governors at their level are able to work this out primarily because the National Guards belong to the governors of the states unless federalized by the president and Congress. So what we're seeing by the Texas National Guard being volunteered to go to Illinois without the consent or the request of the Illinois governor is illegal. And courts have already said so. You already have one federal judge who has temporarily blocked this deployment because they're going to dig further into the weeds. But Republican governors even know that this is a threshold that has not been historically crossed. The governor of Oklahoma has said this sets a very dangerous precedent because he's looking at it from the standpoint of if something's going on in his state that he thinks he can handle, he does not want, say, New York's National Guard coming to Oklahoma to enforce laws that he and his state are responsible for. The current administration does not look at things from a standpoint of if they're not empowered. They're looking at things from the standpoint that they're in power, stop us from doing something that could be most likely illegal. Now, we've seen governors over the course of modern history use their National Guards to help each other out, specifically in natural disasters. So if you're talking about Hurricane Katrina, or if you're talking about other natural disasters or unusual circumstances, they usually communicate together to coordinate a response, and then the federal government comes and provides backup because everybody's on the same page, or at least that's how it used to be. Now, to show you how rare it is just for the federal government to call up the National Guard under the president. I mean, you basically have the 1960s and the Civil Rights Movement, with the forced integration of desegregated schools such as Arkansas, etc. Then you have riots like the 1992 riots, which make anything that President Trump is talking about now regarding crime look like a church picnic. And then, the 2020 protests of George Floyd, depending on where they were. But these were, no kidding, real riots. No such riots are taking place here. And you have governors in Oregon and Illinois looking around, asking themselves, why are National Guard members who are not my National Guard basically infiltrating their states? It's unprecedented. This leads to the legal loopholing that the current administration is doing in order to pull this off. There are two major U.S. title codes that govern the National Guard and how they're distributed. You have Title 32, which deals with the state and its legal authority to use its National Guard. Then you have Title 10, which basically is the federal side of that, where they will call up the National Guard to go into active duty units. Title 10 also covers the rest of the Department of Defense, etc. So what we're seeing here is Trump has called red state governors to use their Title 32 authority to get around him having to use his Title 10 authority to federalize the troops and then have them dispersed on his orders to these states. It's diabolical because, number one, it creates confusion with the chain of command. Do those National Guard units report to the governors of their home state, the governors of the state that they're going to, or to the President of the United States? We don't know. This is something that has to be worked out as these guys deploy. And then you're skirting posse comitatus by doing this because technically President Trump has not activated that particular National Guard unit. They have been volunteered and being sent to an area that they have not been requested. It's borderline constitutional crisis. I really don't know how to break that down. But the reality is we've never had a situation where this is not just happening, but seems to be a new method of operations for deploying the National Guard, to which the National Guard itself has no chain of command or no process established to execute. So how is this playing out? Well, let's start with the actual legal battle. You have 24 attorneys general opposing what Trump is doing. You have 20 attorneys general who are supposedly supporting what he's doing. So you see a deep national divide. We are looking at troop deployments for the first time in modern history being deployed based on political leanings. That is extremely dangerous. And so the National Governors Association, they've taken a poll of them. It's split there. But less than 25% of Americans support deploying the National Guard in law enforcement activities. We know it's not normal. We know at its core and its base it's wrong. And civil military experts are just very concerned that if you continue to do this and create this new norm, you're talking about overwhelming force that may be executed while citizens are lawfully demonstrating their First Amendment rights. And there's no going back once you let that toothpaste out the tube. But in the end, what are we really talking about? We're talking about this fraternity of governors that have worked very well with one another, especially post-World War II. Governors that pride themselves on relationships despite, political leanings being ripped apart, killing self-sufficiency, and most importantly, committing forces to basically meddle in another state's business. That is a dangerous precedent. It also shows weakness in the bonds between the states at the state level. But most importantly, it further desensitizes American citizens and their local political bodies to the deployment of American military forces on American soil to police American citizens. At the end of the day, we are further politicizing the military. This is a reoccurring theme with this administration, from the first time they stepped back into the White House to the various speeches at Quantico and Norfolk, and now this. The National Guard in particular serves communities, not political parties. The National Guard goes into harm's way on behalf of its citizens and not to enforce right or left-wing politics. What's really scary about this is when a true emergency hits, will some states withhold their National Guards for helping out other states? Will it be a quid pro quo to get the help that American citizens need? This is the type of precedent that erodes trust in relationships where, hey, when you need help, we will be there. You can't say that anymore when you're sitting there looking at the governor of Texas going out of his way to oppress the citizens of Illinois.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.